Hello, everybody, and welcome. My name is Alex, and welcome to the Extra Furlong's first ever online event with the legendary commentator, BBC commentator John Hunt, and three-time champion jockey Oisin Murphy. A little bit about the Extra Furlong. We are a new media organisation striving to open the sport of horse racing to a brand new audience. A little bit about the evening in store. First off, we have BBC commentator John Hunt talking all things commentating on the Olympic Games, horse racing and football in general. And then we have a short break, 5-10 minutes, when we welcome three-time champion jockey Oisin Murphy. We'd just like to thank our sponsor for the evening, the Injured Jockeys Fund. Now, the Injured Jockeys Fund was found in 1964 following the accidents of Tim Brookshaw and Paddy Fowler at the Grand National. The fund has helped over 1,000 jockeys so far and their families. They have 3 rehab centres across the country and have paid out more than 18 million in charitable aid. Our donation link is located in the webinar link in our bio or in our bio on social media. So if you would like to donate to this wonderful charity, please do. Now, first off, we would like to welcome John Hunt. Unfortunately, due to scheduling issues, we've had to pre-record this chat with him, but apologies for this, but we can assure you Oisin Murphy will be talking live come 8 o'clock. So just like enjoy everything, commentating, racing, Olympic Games and football. Right, so I'd just like to welcome John Hunt here, BBC horse racing commentator. How are you doing, John? You all right?
I'm all right, thank you. Yeah, up in the northeast at the moment. It's pretty cool up here, isn't it? You'd probably know it very well.
Yes,
Been
not bad.
strolling around the big market, but it was pretty empty last night. But so there we are. So I decided to go watch my West Ham against Southampton, and that didn't work out very well either. So there we go.
Hey, you might get Champions League though.
Well, I think it's stretching it. Don't you think on last night's evidence?
Early on in the season, I thought it was game on, but
we're looking tired. I think we should have bought back up in January. It didn't happen for whatever reason, and I think we'll pay the price now. But look, Liverpool and Seville away to come over the next few days. It's a pretty straightforward thing.
Yeah, pretty easy fixtures. So just starting from the beginning, how did you get into the sport of horse racing? I know I've seen previous podcasts that your dad was a big influence on you.
Yeah, my late dad, it was a huge racing fan. Dad worked in the National Health Service. He was a nurse and worked his way up through management there. And but his great love during his downtime was sport generally, but specifically horse racing and football. And I had the bug at a very early age, simply watching racing with him. You know, on a Saturday afternoon, I must admit I was quite intrigued with the betting side of things. I found that quite exciting. But very soon, I'm guessing maybe 12, 13, that sort of age. I remember sitting with Dad watching the racing, and I was aware even then sometimes Dad was struggling to find which was his horse, and I found that came quite easy to me, and I could spot it. And I didn't know way back then that I'd be doing now what I am doing. But when you look back, there were some clear signs that I had the right sort of skill set for spotting horses. Dad on Saturday afternoon in his later life, he managed to buy a little horse that was pretty successful as well. And that horse's name was Broadstairs Beauty, won 14 races, including at the Newmarket July meeting, which was a big thrill. I commentated that day as well. So we had some really, really happy days in horse racing. Still are happy days now, but sadly Dad's not around anymore.
Yeah. So leads on my next question. What was life like for you before you got into horse racing, the commentating side?
Professionally, you mean?
Yeah, professionally.
Well, yeah. I back then there was no opportunity to go to university. I just wasn't smart enough. So, and that was never on the horizon after A levels. Yeah. And so initially, I was a nurse, did my nurse training in what was called mental health back then. Enjoyed that immensely, but the hospital I was at was very remote, and it didn't really suit me at all. So I fancied moving back down to London, and had a few pals in the police force. So they were having a great time, and I thought, well, that seemed a brilliant bridge. Just 18 and a half, nearly 19. I thought, well, give that a crack. Lucky enough to get in there, and ended up having 4 fantastic years in the Met, which were brilliant. And then out of the blue, almost, my girlfriend then, who's now my wife, Carol, she was living in Harrow, towards North London area, that sort of area, and the Ladbrokes, the bookmakers were based in Harrow at the time. and they ran an advert for a trainee broadcaster in the local paper. Seems quite old-fashioned now, doesn't it?
Yeah,
that
you
way
can
of
get that
going.
nowadays, yeah.
Not really, although it's quite different. I suppose the same advert would appear on social media now, wouldn't it?
Yeah,
Things like that. So
yeah.
I think the vehicle for those sort of things has changed, but the message is still the same, I think.
Yeah.
But in any event, she saw that over an evening meal one day. She saw the advert. I'd never saw it at all. But for her seeing that, I would never have got into it, I'm sure, because I wasn't looking to leave, wasn't looking to change direction. But she saw it and said, I reckon you'd enjoy that. So I applied for it. My boss in the police said, if you get it, if you're successful and you want to give it a go, come back. If it doesn't work out, and we'll have you back here. So, that was a gamble to nothing, really. So I joined Ladbrokes back in the summer of 1989. I was at Snaresbrook Crown Court on the Friday afternoon. And then the Monday morning, I was in Ladbrokes preparing for Royal Ascot that week, which was an amazing feeling. I still remember how exciting it was.
Yeah.
And I remember all that Royal Ascot, sitting there watching the racing, obviously trying to be as helpful as possible around the office. It was a very junior role, but thinking, wow, this is pretty cool way to earn a little bit of money. So and there we are. That was, as I say, 1989. Became a commentator in 1992, and here we are. Yeah.
So leading on to this one, is commentating, I feel, requires a certain level of self-confidence and belief. Did you at the start believe in yourself and have that right level of confidence?
I had quite. That's a great question. I had quite a good level of self-confidence generally.
Yeah.
But I didn't really, until I sat down to try to do it. I didn't really have a massive level of confidence that I was going to be able to be a commentator.
Yeah. Was there a moment that flipped that for you, inability wise, and you thought, yeah, I've got this now?
Well, obviously, when I got the job at Ladbrokes, as part of the interview process, they set me a task or two. It might have been to conduct an interview with somebody just a bit like this, really, or to have a go at some fake commentary and stuff like that. So there must have been a stage where I realised that they thought I could do it, which obviously, when anybody around gives you a little bit of feedback to suggest that what you're doing is okay, that naturally fuels your own self-belief, doesn't it? So there must have been that. But then again, back then the training was largely built. I mean, I wasn't let loose on the microphone for many, many weeks, but doing greyhound commentaries and stuff like that, repetitive. But you can weave some individuality into greyhound commentaries as well, and lots of guys do now. I'm very impressed with the number of people who are able to do it so skillfully now. So step by step, you get that belief. I suppose it's like anything, mate, isn't it? It's like if you're a trainee bricklayer and all of a sudden you do a really smart job and it's really neat and straight, you think, that's good. Yeah. Exactly. And the more you do it, like anything, isn't it? The more you do of anything, the better you get. Particularly, if you're prepared to learn lessons and learn from your mistakes, and there were plenty of those along the way. Yeah, or near perfect. I still have days now where I walk away and think, that wasn't particularly a good day. So, but then you learn to deal with that and sort of trust that next time you'll be doing it much better.
Yeah. So on your time at Ladbrokes, some Googling, how valuable was the year in practice in the field? You previously mentioned how you had a year in the field where it was just straight practice. How valuable was that for your career?
Yeah, really, really, really important. And, any youngster that I see these days who asks for a bit of advice, I'd say grab yourself some of that practice, even if you have to generate it yourself. Back at Ladbrokes, like I say, I was able to do dog commentaries. I was listening to really strong established broadcasters like Paul Jacobs and Angus Loughran and Derek Thompson. They were all the part of the team, brilliant broadcasters, each of the three of them, in their very different ways. So you're just absorbing what they were doing as well all the time. You weren't on air, you were listening to how they were doing things. I never ever forget the famous actor Michael Caine saying to young actors, aspiring actors, that if they see anything in film or television that they think, wow, yeah, that actor did that really well, they won't just nick it, steal their technique. It's they've not got a copyright on it, but if it's effective, tuck that away to try and use yourself. So, you're trying to absorb all these things. Again, access to live sport was great. Ladbrokes allowed me, as I say, in the initial stages to commentate on greyhound racing, but not just that, but just to be able to draw some strength from just actually broadcasting, which is a weird phenomenon in its own right, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, we're having a nice chat here, 1-to-1. It doesn't feel like we're broadcasting, but we sort of are, aren't we? Really?
Yeah.
It's the more anybody does of that is great. Back in the day, I used to report for Ladbrokes. This sounds really weird, I'm sure, but we used to have a service where we would give football score updates through the night. There might be 20 games taking place, and all you'd be relying on is teletext, to tell you that someone had scored and who had scored it. But we'd be verbalizing that and trying to make it interesting, embellishing it with team news and that sort of thing. So from very bare bones, you quickly learnt the skills of trying to create a picture, an image of what was going on. West Ham still lost that night as well, I'm sure of it. But nothing changes there. So it was a case of grasping every single opportunity, happily getting on with any task that was set you, and realizing that whatever you were doing, no matter how small or insignificant, it was a really important building block to where you wanted to be a few years down the line.
I believe I found online that Richard Hoyle started with you. Was it helpful coming through with him and having each other to bounce off and talk about experience and learn from each other? Is that valuable?
Well, yeah, it was just the historic, not that it matters a great deal, but just the historical context. So Richard started as a commentator with me in 1992. Yeah. Back in 89, Ian Bartlett was with me at Ladbrokes. So that was Ian and Richard are still great mates now. That was great having Ian around, someone you could, he knew the time of day. Ian was already by then a really experienced commentator and presenter. Yeah, absolutely. Yes. So, and of course, friendly as well, approachable. So all those things were important. He realized I was very wet behind the ears. And if there was anything reassuring to be said, he would do that. Richard and I didn't meet until 3 years later when SIS were recruiting a whole wave of new younger commentators to replace, or well, not to replace, but to join up with the existing band of commentators as well. I think SIS wanted to freshen up the scene a little bit back in the day, and luckily Richard and I joined at the same time. Richard, I think, had a diverse background as well. He was an accountant before he got into race commentating as well. So, lots of us did lots of different things before we sort of fell on our feet within the world of horse racing. Yeah.
So on that year in the field, in regards to your voice, was anyone you were trying to emulate or sound like, or was it just you were going for it on your own?
Yeah, not at all. Not at all. It's a weird thing with your voice. I'm sure 95% of you and your friends, if they heard themselves back on a phone or any sort of recording, they'd dislike it. I bet you'd think, oh God, I sound terrible. There's not an awful lot you can do about that, except you can improve things like diction. You can, if you're speaking too fast, you can slow things down. You can develop some control over what you've got. You can't necessarily change your God-given voice, can you? But you can refine it. That's basically all I would say. And people with different dialects. I mean, I'm thinking of commentators who I admire. Two of the very, very best from Ireland, Conor McNamara, who's got the most amazing voice, really powerful, and another football commentator from these parts in the northeast, John Murray, the football commentator, has got the most beautiful, soft northeast accent as well. So I think whatever you're given, you can work with. Basically, I never. You asked me directly, did I try and sound like anybody? I didn't really. No, I was just concentrating on effective communication, just trying to find the right words, vocabulary, of course, very, very important.
Yeah.
But there's no point in trying to be a broadcaster if you're not going to control yourself well enough to persuade people to keep listening.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? It's.
Yeah.
I'm not. Hope I'm not overplaying the part. But if I was to sit here and just jabber on about me, not let you get a word in edgeways, you'd be thinking, well, all right, this is all right, but I've got a few questions I want to ask you here, but
right.
It's got to be. But the point is communication, whether it's one-to-one, in-vision communication like we're having now, or a broader communication like commentating for a 70,000 crowd at Cheltenham on Gold Cup Day. You've got to include the listener into that, haven't you? The person listening, or else, or if you're shutting them out and just getting on with your own thing, not giving a thought to what they might need from you, then you're on a very, very sticky wicket. Yeah,
definitely. So I saw you talk about the Australian commentator Jim McGraw.
Yeah.
Could you elaborate on how important he was from coming over for young commentators, say?
Well, what Jim did was, and this ties in with the SIS change of direction back in the late 80s, early 90s. What Jim did was to come over and overnight used a range of language that we'd never heard on the racetrack before, and it was, I remember, sitting there mid-20s listening to that thinking, wow. I mean, there were some, don't get me wrong, there are some absolutely amazing commentators that went before us, our generation and two generations before that. There's some amazing commentators. I strongly recommend any youngster try and get hold of races described by people like Rawley Gilbert or Robin Gray. They had fantastic voices, but they were, through no fault of their own, they were set in their ways. It was quite regimented as to how you performed a race commentary.
It was almost like a breath of fresh air from Jim McGraw.
Well, it was, yeah. Jim was pacey, exciting, didn't mind taking a few chances, sometimes took a view in a race as well, just setting a few questions, have they gone too fast? So he's miles back, he'll have to sprout wings to win from there. And just a whole range of really fantastic descriptive phrases, that were, whether you like it or not, it was a very, very new experience. And I absolutely loved it. And I'm still in touch with Jim to this day, and I'm massively grateful for the impact that he had. Because, of course, again, for those of you of a certain younger age, you might not realize, but Jim was lead commentator when the BBC TV covered all the big racing events. So he followed Sir Peter O'Sullivan, who was another of the greats. But Jim was just a marvelous commentator. And again, if you want to look up something for future reference that Jim did during the bomb scare Grand National, where everybody had to evacuate the track, Jim was told all the lead presenters, Des Lyman, that sort of thing, had to leave the track, but Jim was way down the country, still with a mic live, and they kept him there, and he did a 25-minute solo there about the scene, about the impact, non-stop and unscripted. Even though he was a great commentator, I think that was one of Jim's finest moments.
Champion, thank you. So how do you feel is the best way to engage an audience, or is it completely down to how the race unfolds?
Difficult question to answer. I think, and it depends on the sort of race we're talking about.
Yeah, because if you've got a Class 6 at Newcastle, it's obviously different to Supreme.
I've got a few of those tonight, funnily enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, look, you think if anybody's watching that, they're doing that by choice, aren't they? They've not just stumbled. They've not stumbled across it. So I don't think necessarily you do have to engage that audience.
Yeah,
you try hard, obviously, to present a really accurate and entertaining, colourful commentary.
Yeah.
Those are the staples that you would always try and do, no matter what the race. But we're just over a week away from the Cheltenham Festival, where I'll be on BBC Radio, broadcasting mostly to people who aren't watching the event.
Yeah.
Are in their cars, on the way to the supermarket, on the school run, working, of course. The number of people we get who say, look, I'm a postie just finishing off. Yeah, this is great. Keep it up and stuff like that. That really resonates with me, because these are people who get in touch with you to say they're enjoying it, who would ordinarily, if they could be, they'd be there, wouldn't they? Or they'd be having their feet up at home watching it, but they have to work. And similarly, we do it for the World Service, which casts its net right across the world to millions of people as well, who ordinarily wouldn't have access. So the point I'm making there is the Newcastle Class 6 tonight will have its own designated audience.
Yeah,
you do a race for the Cheltenham Festival to a world audience. It's a totally different audience. Yeah, so therefore you do have to work harder on engagement. So it's much more about, for me at any rate, it's much more about detailing particular stories behind the event. Who are the main characters involved? Yeah. Why is this significant? And when you get something like a best mate going for a third Gold Cup, which has been done so few times in history, that's a pretty easy one. Sometimes obviously you have to dig down a little bit deeper into the personalities involved as to why it might be a jockey returning after 18 months injury, or a horse for that matter doing typically heroic things. So there could be all sorts of stories, but it's in that instance it's down for you to find those stories and sort of bring them to life. We get some criticism sometimes for when you're doing a broader sports commentary to a broader sporting audience for focusing too much on the big potential headline makers, but I don't really make any apology for that. I mean, when Tiger Roll won his second Grand National, there was only one story in town, and more recently, when Rachel Blackmore won the Grand National last year, people say, well, you didn't say he was second and third and fourth. I'm sorry, but for a world audience, no one cares. No one cares who was third and fourth. No. You and I, who like a bet and follow it really closely, third and fourth, we understand matters. It's important. But when Rachel Blackmore becomes the first female rider to win the world's greatest race, that's the first and only town. Yeah,
definitely. So touching on the radio side of things, how does commentating on the radio differ to commentating on TV? Obviously, you don't have that image there that the viewers can see. You've almost got to paint that picture for them. So how
and I love doing that. I absolutely love that because I hopefully have my antennae up for little small minutiae, little details that other people can't afford. Or not just always in floods of tears, and stuff like that. But I never forget Sir Michael Stout winning a big race, and all he did, we were covering it on the radio, and all he did, I think it was a close finish, big race, close finish, and he won it. And all Stout did was to put his hand up on his head, and he dragged slowly his hand down his face, as if. And squeezing his face, and you could see his face contour under his hand. It meant so much, and it was such a relief. And it was really good fun trying to find the words to match that small little act that betrayed Stout's pressurized moment. There, really, more than anything, Stout's not one to start crying. Stout's not one to start throwing his hat up in the air and doing a jig like Clive Britton used to do, is he? But when Stout does little things like that, it's important. So to try and catch that sort of moment and do them justice is what I find really challenging as well. And of course, going back to race commentary in particular, and it sometimes spills over. Now I don't think it's a great problem to do it for TV racing as well. But I think you've got to be always mindful of race distances. What's the distance between the first and the second?
Yeah.
How far back are the chasing pack in third, fourth, and fifth? Who's on the move? Who's really struggling at the back end of the field? Keeping an eye on riding styles and who seems to be under pressure. Sometimes it works absolutely great, but sometimes it doesn't. I remember in the champion chase, I was working with Charlie Post, and after 2 fences, we said Defi de Soy is not enjoying this, and sure enough, he ran badly. So that's a really good example of that's a really good example of trying to analyze and not predict as such, but just give the viewer
identify something early, sort of thing.
Yeah, just to say, look, we don't think this is going so well. Well, we might be wrong, but I'd rather say it and be wrong than not say it, because then, if you feel something and you haven't said it, well, what's the point, really? We could just send you a text as to who's won the race, couldn't we? Then, so, and it would become as cold as that very, very quickly. Doesn't always work out that way. I mean, I remember when Lord Windermere won the Cheltenham Gold Cup and Luke Harvey was alongside me in the commentary box. Same sort of thing early on. Luke said, "There's one horse that definitely won't be winning this Cheltenham Gold Cup, and it's Lord Windermere." And 6 minutes later, there he was with the crown on his head. So, sometimes it works.
Identifying these things is like all part of the story of the race, really, like the story tells of the race.
Yeah, without a shadow of a doubt. And like so many things in broadcasting, when it works, you feel very good about it, but sometimes it doesn't work out. But that's the risk you take, and I think you should always be prepared to take risks in sports commentary, definitely.
Yeah. So how would you describe your voice on the commentary side of things?
I think it is. I have to work quite hard. I think my general voice, like most people, like we touched on earlier, I think my voice is pretty boring, really. I think when the commentary's on, I think I have a powerful voice, and where I'm lucky, I have a range as well, so I can talk quite quietly like this, absolutely no problem at all. But if I have to cut loose and really get excited, and then it gets to another level, and then they're at the last fence in the Cheltenham Gold Cup, and there are 5 in line, and the crowd's going mad, you've got to work against that sort of noise.
Yeah,
do you see what I'm getting? I always feel I'm very fortunate that I've more often than not always got somewhere that I can go to in terms of raising the stakes. Like, so I feel very lucky. You
range on that commentary at the final, after the final fence.
That all happened quite quickly. That did, and it was quite a short, sharp burst, wasn't it? Really. Yeah. I think Cheltenham's a good example where the strength of the voice is a real advantage, because I mean, have you been to the Cheltenham Festival yourself? Do you mind me asking?
I'm going this year, first time actually.
Brilliant. Well, I think you'll be absolutely staggered by the just the general noise. It's a crazy place, and it's great fun, infectious, and all the rest of it. But God, when they're a mile away at the top of the hill, and everyone starts cheering, you have to, as a commentator, you have to sort of ride those waves, and that demands that. I think a strong voice is a real plus at a venue and an event like that.
Yeah. I saw recently Jerry Hannon had a little bit of a moment at Leopardstown when his voice let him down. Is that ever happened to you where your voice has let you down when you're on the commentary?
Yeah. And I was so lucky. I was so lucky as well, because it was the Ascot Gold Cup. Stradivarius won it. I can't think which one it was anyway, but it was the World Cup year, because the World Cup was on.
Yeah.
And of course, 5 Live is a multi-dimensional news and sports channel. They're who I was working for at the time. And the editorial decision at the time was that they would be taking the football commentary from the World Cup at that particular time, and that I would commentate on the Ascot Gold Cup, and they would turn that around. They would record it and play it out
And then
a few minutes after the event, when the football had reached half time or whatever, that was the scenario. So I was really, really lucky, because at the end of that Ascot Gold Cup, I lost my voice completely, and oh God, I was crestfallen, but immediately took solace from the fact that it hadn't gone out live, you know.
Yeah.
So that Gold Cup never did see the light of day, obviously, you know. So because it just didn't happen. But how lucky was that, you know, on the occasion where they decided to take whoever it was, Wales against Uruguay,
the football
closing stages commentary, rather than the Ascot Gold Cup. I'm sure at the time I was really annoyed about that particular editorial decision, but thank goodness that was the time when I lost my voice. And way back when I started in 1993, there was a Scottish Grand National. It was my first big. So I started as a trainee commentator in 92, spring 92, and that April 1993 was my first big race.
Yeah,
Scottish Grand National, and the favourite got left at the start, and I went from 0 to 100 straight away, and then realised I've got like 7 minutes broadcasting still to do, and I was absolutely hanging by a thread at the end of that as well, because it was an exciting finish. And the horse, Run for Free was the name of the horse, who got left at the start. He got up and managed to win the race, which was extraordinary, really.
Yeah.
So there we are.
We touched before about storylines and storytelling.
In
football and cricket, commentators produce like tops and storylines. I know Peter Drury is very good at this when he talks about like Cristiano Ronaldo and stuff like that before a match. Would you ever like story tell before a race, or are you waiting until the final furlong? If something's like 10 lengths clear, you can story tell then?
You have to, with your story developments, you have to be careful that you have got the story right in your own head. You know the facts of the story.
Yeah.
And B, when to deliver that is the key. People often ask in racing commentary, have you got a prepared line or two, you know, for the end of a race?
Yeah.
And I answer honestly that you always think about it. You always think about what you want to say and the point you want to get across. But if you end up scripting a line and then trying to shoehorn it in, and there's not
naturally,
and there's no space for it, and God forbid, I mean, let's go back to the Rachel Blackmore story, which was obviously a really great story.
Yeah.
And what was wonderful about being able to tell that story was that she was always going to win that national, wasn't she? From the last fence, there was going to be no catching her, really.
Yeah.
But even then, I waited till the elbow, when the gap between her and the others was still 6 or 7 lengths.
Yeah.
Before going for the fact that, you know, hitting the story hard. That this has never happened before. This is an extraordinary moment for female sport and females in horse racing in particular. Just imagine if you had started down that road and she had just been a length clear and she got collared.
Yeah.
She got beat. Well, then you're in a whole world of trouble, aren't you? So you have to know your story. You have to know how much time you've got to deliver the story, and you've got to choose the words carefully to hit that story on the head. You know, sometimes you might have 3 or 4 seconds to nail it. Other times, like Rachel Blackmore, you might have 20, 25, 30 seconds easily to be able to elaborate on the story. But you have to be dexterous enough and have thought about it enough beforehand before you go crashing in. So it's not so much about execution. It's about thinking about the delivery, planning for what may happen beforehand in your own head. So
would you create stories for the horses you think are going to win, or what happens if you get a 50-1 shot that comes in, and would you be caught out by that, or would you try and piece a story together, or piece like facts about each horse?
Yeah,
the inevitable.
Yeah, you've got to be prepared for all sorts of things, haven't you? I mean, the Grand National is a really good place to start. I mean, I did Monmouth's Grand National 100-1. Wow, what? How did that win? And Aurora's Encore is another one I remember. What I remember about that more than anything was the silence in the crowd. And I thought, hang on, this is the Grand National. This place is usually potty, but this winner's coming up the running with virtually no one applauding, let alone cheering. And that, so in that instance, I remember letting this silence speak for itself. I think I referred to it, something you could hear a pin drop or something, or, that sort of thing, and let
mentioned,
exactly. Let your environment almost tell the tale for you, Just recently I was in Saudi Arabia for the Saudi Cup, where Emblem Road won it for Saudi Arabia, first time they've ever won the race. No, big crowd there, no betting, of course, no drinking, so everyone's completely sober. Extraordinary reaction to their winner. And again, I didn't know, I couldn't tell you much about Emblem Road. He'd won his previous 4 starts. Couldn't tell you much about the horse. Could tell you even less about the trainer or jockey. But the moment was the story there, and the extraordinary reaction of the near 20,000 crowd there that night was quite amazing. They burst into party mode at the flick of a switch. You just sensed for them it was a very special moment. So again, that for me was the story, the reaction to that. Not necessarily that, I don't know, Emblem Road might have, I don't know, any story, human story around the jockey or trainer disappeared so far as I was concerned, as the reaction to that winner told its own tale.
What's racing like out there as opposed to over here, like in Meydan or?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't really know. I've never been to Meydan in my life. Never been to Dubai, and that was my first visit to Saudi Arabia. Very difficult to know for sure. Racing in Saudi Arabia has only been going since 1965. That was the first time a thoroughbred set foot on a track there, and that's, scarily, that's within my lifetime. So, they're still very much an emerging nation. I would have thought that sort of result for them on the world stage would give their industry an awful lot of impetus. And I could imagine, especially that night, I don't know if you were watching, but Japan had some big winners as well. And
that was four on the day.
Yeah. And of course, their Japan's approach to breeding in particular has been remarkable for the last 20 years. And they're getting their course. And it was funny that the Saudi head of the jockey club over there said that they want to use Japan as their model for the future. So, when you're an old man, old and grey, who knows what sort of powerhouse Saudi Arabia might be on the world scene. It's hard to see it. It's hard to see it right here and now, but you just never know, do you? You never know.
You never know. In 30 years' time, it could be the place to be.
Possibly, yeah. Possibly. And that's the exciting thing about sport and the future, isn't it? None of us ever really know.
Yeah. So the BBC has allowed you to cover many sports, like what we've mentioned, such as like the Summer Olympics, the Winter Olympics, Commonwealth Games.
Yeah.
How did that come about for you? How did you get the gig for the Olympics?
Initially, there was, there's always movement, isn't there? There's always people leaving. There's always people coming and going and stuff like that. So I'd been the racing commentator for 8 years by the time London 2012 came along, and they were just desperately short of somebody to do the equestrian events. And they asked me if I'd fancy it. And I was scared initially because I thought to myself, well, I like to think I know horse racing inside out, but I haven't got a clue about dressage. I haven't got a clue really about eventing or show jumping. But I was reassured by my manager at the time that with suitable amount of homework, you'd be fine. And so, I took that on. Ended up having a great time. Really, really loved that. Absolutely fantastic. And 2012, I remember very, very fondly. We were pretty successful there as well in the equestrian disciplines. So that went well. Worked with Pippa Funnell that fortnight, and she was lovely to me. You know, really, really helpful, and understood that I didn't know a great deal about the sports I was watching, but could communicate the key component parts, and again the big stories. You know, so that was absolutely fantastic. By the time Rio came along, they needed a swimming commentator, and of course, coverage of swimming is all about World Championship, and Commonwealth Games and stuff like that. So they needed someone who could commit more time to that. So they asked me if I'd change sports, go from equestrianism to swimming in time for the Rio Games, which, funnily enough, I actually did straight after London 2012. 2013 was my first swimming World Championships in Barcelona, and I've so thoroughly enjoyed doing that. It's a fabulous world, working with great people like Karen Pickering and Steve Parry. They're amazing people, and I mean that in every sense of the word, because they work hard, they want to do a really good job, but they're such good people as well, such good fun. And so that's been fantastic. So I've been on that now getting on for 10 years. So the swimming is great. So, but yeah, between eventing, show jumping, and dressage, and a bit of swimming, I've done the last 3 Summer Olympics, and as you say, the last 2 winters as well, which is nice. And I think the winter opportunity came really off the back of doing the Summer Games for Radio 5. You know, I've done the Winter Olympics for BBC TV, and went to South Korea, which was great fun. Didn't go to Beijing. We had to do that remotely for all sorts of different reasons. But you know, in equal measure, they were really good opportunities, really good fun.
Yeah. So stepping into that new environment, what was the biggest learning curve for calling these new events like the swimming and all the Winter Olympics, like the skeleton, the bobsleigh? How did that differ from horse racing?
Well, it differs massively in terms of you know, the subject matter, and again, knowing the stories. But what I did with each of those was, and it's just what we talked about at the start of our chat with actor Michael Caine, encouraging people to steal good things from people who've done it well in the past. You know, I listened to really good commentators on those sports, and thought, well, yeah, what are they doing so well? Why are they so good at what they're doing? Martin Haven, for example, on the winter sports, is a fabulous commentator, really lovely voice, fantastic voice, but knows his subject inside out as well. So I enjoyed listening to him for the last Winter Olympic Games. Swimming commentaries, some amazing swimming commentators over the years, you know, who've delivered fantastic stuff. So again, I was learning and picking things off them all of the time. So yeah, that completely goes back to our chat right at the start about where you have to keep your ears and eyes open and identify what people within those sports are doing well, and how you can carry that forward and use it to your own benefit. Yeah,
because obviously, like, the women's skeleton final is completely different to the Royal Hunt Cup, say.
Yeah.
Like, in terms of calling it.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, the Royal Hunt Cup, you're exposed. There's no one, there's 30 runners. There's no one, if you haven't got the winner at the winning line, no one's going to give it to you, are they? But I suppose the pressure's off with even though it's an Olympic final in the women's skeleton, because at the end of the day, you're watching a clock, aren't you, really?
Yeah.
And everyone can see that clock. But it's just trying with your co-commentator, John Jackson, in my case. John was the bronze medal winner from Sochi in the men's bobsleigh. Brilliant guy, knows the sport inside out. So, yeah, we work a way of working together.
Yeah.
John's the expert, so I feel people want to hear what he thinks way more than they want to hear from me. So I just top and tail it, really, you know, and contextualize it, you know. So the funny thing about that,
you've got like one target in the person on the skeleton, whereas in the Royal Hunt Cup, you got 30 targets to think about.
Yeah, that's right, and they all come down one by one, don't they? So you know, it's there might be 30 in the race, but it takes 2 hours to run it in skeleton. That's the thing. Yeah, but of course, the funny thing about the Lizzie Arnold's gold medal in the skeleton in Pyeongchang was, of course, it was clear she had won gold, which was absolutely fantastic. The poor Austrian girl, Janine Flock, who went last of all, completely lost it on the last run. So, and you could see that unraveling, and because that unraveled, it meant that Lizzie Arnold was going to win the gold medal. And I was with John Jackson there, and of course, John's going berserk. He's so pleased for Lizzie. But in all the mayhem, when Lizzie wins gold, I just clocked that Janine Flock had done so badly that she had dropped from not just first to second, but second to third, and then third to fourth. She had dropped out of the medals altogether. And that meant that Laura Dees had won the bronze medal.
Yeah, she got the bronze, yeah.
Absolutely, which was in danger, in that moment, was in danger of getting completely lost in all the gold medal hoo-ha for Lizzie Arnold, So I tried, Amy Williams was in there as well, a former skeleton gold medalist. So her and John Jackson were going crazy. And I remember going like this, and they just stummed up for about 20 seconds to enable me to say, and of course, all that means that Laura Dees has won the bronze as well. You imagine Laura winning a bronze in its own right would have been that big headline,
Yeah. Because Lizzie Arnold, it was almost lost in the moment.
Exactly. And I didn't want that to happen. So, I was pleased. I kept my eyes on the screen to see where Janine had finished. Else, I don't think we would have missed it, but we wouldn't have got to Laura's bronze medal as early as we perhaps should have done. Yeah.
Is there any stories that stand out from the Olympic Games, like calling Adam Peaty's gold in Rio? Is anything that stand out to you as being a real centerpiece of your time at the Olympics?
I would say Adam Peaty. Adam Peaty's just a destroyer. And if people don't know how he swims, he just obliterates his field. So his success has been really wonderful to witness and commentate on. But in terms of a highlight from the swimming pool in Rio, I would say Michael Phelps is. How lucky am I to be able to commentate on a Michael Phelps gold medal? Yeah. So I did in the men's 200 meter individual medley, and what was fantastic about that was that there was a Brazilian in the final, a fellow called Tiago Pereira. And the whole arena was packed, cheering for him, of course. And I can feel it now. They were going, Tiago, Tiago, Tiago. And of course, there's a little fella at the side of the pool who blows a whistle. That's meant to get everyone to quieten down, Well, absolutely no chance of that. So there was this amazing atmosphere. Pereira was in the lineup. Phelps was up against his great rival Ryan Lochte as well. The two Americans were side by side in lanes 4 and 5. There was a British swimmer in there as well, which obviously added another layer of interest.
To the story.
Yeah, to the story, exactly. So it was all set fair for a brilliant race. And as I say, 200 meters, individual medley, one length of each stroke. And it was close up until the final turn. And Phelps just went down the last 50 and won it in amazing style,
Yeah.
And I just thought that whole 10 minutes before, during, and after was a special thing to have commentated on. I absolutely, I look back on that and think, God, that was a brilliant moment in time.
Yeah, so obviously being a West Ham fan.
Yeah, let's talk top class sport.
Football, yeah. Well, I'm a Sunderland fan, so I can't really talk top class football,
No.
But so how enjoyable was making that match of the day debut in the FA Cup at the London Stadium?
Oh, that was fantastic. Yeah, that was really, really good. Really, really good. I always knew that was a one-off because, I'd love to be a football commentator as well, to be honest, but you cannot, both events, racing and football, largely dominated by Saturdays.
Yeah.
You can't be two places at once, can you? I get the occasional Saturday off from horse racing where I'm lucky enough to go reporting for 5 Live on football on those occasions. But yeah, the guys at Match of the Day were really lovely to me, and letting me go to West Ham was fantastic. I love the day. Birmingham City were the opponents. West Ham won 2-0. We scored an early goal and a late goal. not a great deal happened in the match of the day running order. If there were 30 games, it was probably down there, game 27 or something like that. But it didn't really matter at all. It was just such a great deal of fun to be able to do that. I mean, I go to see West Ham home and away when I can, but that was a nice day. I just felt that was my old man would have been chuffed to bits. The times we went away to Notts County and Plymouth and stuff like that together, watching West Ham.
Yeah, champion.
That would have been good.
Yeah. So I've just got some questions from the audience that I've sent them in.
Yeah, fire.
And so, just a quick one: which do you prefer, flat or jump racing, and why?
I prefer to watch and to engage with. I prefer jump racing. I've just got an affinity to jump racing more than I do flat racing. But you might be surprised. The answer, if the question had been, "What do you prefer to commentate on?" I'd definitely say flat racing, because it's a more immediate challenge. It's a bit more of a test, I think.
Right.
And I quite like that. It puts me on. I always say to people, I can't paint pictures, I can't do crosswords, I can't cook very well, I can't make anything with my hands, but I can commentate. And that when you have a tricky 20 runner sprint handicap at Thirsk and you do it okay, that's a bit like completing the Times. A bit like completing the Times crossword, So I like that as a discipline.
Yeah. So the next one quickly is for the big races, big race meets. Do you have any pre-race preparation, pre-race rituals?
Not really. I always, when Dad was alive, we always used to stand opposite the winning line at Cheltenham. Always at the third pillar. We always used to say, if we get lost, we'll meet you by the third pillar. Mm-hmm. And I always go down to the third pillar at Cheltenham now and say a quick hello to Dad before I start a day's work. So that's a bit of a sentimental thing, but I quite like to do that. It's just a touch base with the past a little bit, isn't it? I think it helps really. I like to sing in the car on the way to the races. Because I think warming up the voice is no bad thing, and it gets the adrenaline going as well. So bit of meatloaf in the car on the way to the races has been heard of before. Get some strange looks from the filling station as you pull in. Yeah. Doing a bit of headbanging there behind the wheel, but not that I've got too much left to headbang with, to be honest with you, but there we are.
So just one final question. What was commentating through COVID like for you, for a racecourse commentator? What was it with no crowds, and was there anything else extra that changed?
You've got to be careful here because the knee-jerk reaction to that question is to say it was miserable, and it was miserable. But you had to keep pinching yourself and saying, "Look, at least we're on. At least we're operating." At least you're there. Yeah. There were loads of other sports in particular that didn't get going. Racing finished in the just after the Cheltenham Festival and was back in the game June the 1st.
Yeah, it was one of the first ones to be back, I think, something like that.
Yeah, it was. I remember the Newcastle, funny enough, was the
first one, wasn't it? Yeah, was
the first meeting back, and so you could feel sorry for yourself, saying, "God, it's soulless." And I look back at last year's Cheltenham Gold Cup with that shot of the empty stands behind, and it's like, and you think, "Oh yeah, that was such a hollow experience, really." But you've got to catch yourself on a little bit and say, look, you were very lucky to be there. Yeah. You were still able to describe some great racing, but it was just really odd. It was just a really strange experience. Talk to any of the football commentators who had similar experiences with empty stadiums. Some of them even had to cope with piped atmosphere on the speakers, didn't they? Fake crowd noise and stuff like that, which I never bought into at all. You can't fake something like that. Yeah. As you know, as a Sunderland fan, when the opposition score, their fans go nuts, don't they? So genuinely, but so COVID was. And look, you're saying all of this. And, you know, you see that programme the other day, poor Kate Garraway's husband still struggling desperately with the after effects of catching COVID 2 years ago. So you've got to be careful what you say and how you say it.
Yeah.
But you asked me directly about what it was like to commentate at events during COVID. And I was pleased to do it, but it was a pretty underwhelming, pretty sad experience.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much, John. It's been an
You're welcome, mate.
Thank you very much. We're just going to take a short break before we go with Oisin Murphy. Yeah, that was a fantastic chat with John Hunt into the insight of Olympic, horse racing and football commentary. We're just going to take a quick 5-minute break. So go take a tea break, stretch your legs, and we'll be back in 5 minutes with 3-time champion jockey Oisin Murphy. Thank you.
Down the outside, Ben Battle well clear of him last. This is a rising star, Ben Battle. Ben Battle's going to bolt in the Dubai turf. It's Ben Battle by 4 lengths.
Blade is Wagnerian. It's Suave Richard's cup. Suave Richard takes the cup from Curran Bouquet d'Or. Wagnerian Ginambo when it was all over from You Can Smile. Daiwa Cap.
Stages, and it's Wichita at the moment in the purple cap. Kamiko the far side of him going through to League late on. Kamiko's 1 to Wichita's second being a 2.
All three will win the race again for Jeff Smith. Oisin Murphy in the saddle for Andrew Balding.
Gilligan side lead. Here comes Dunbar Road. They're coming to the wire, and it is. Oh, it's desperately close. Was it Marsh Lorraine?
Down the outside, Ben Battle well clear of Viv lost. This is a rising star, Ben Battle. Ben Battle's going to bolt in the Dubai turf. It's Ben Battle by 4 lengths.
Blade is Wagnerian. It's Suave Richard's cup. Suave Richard takes the cup from Curran Bouquet d'Or, Wagnorian Ginambo when it was all over from You Can Smile, Daiwa
Stages, and it's Wichita at the moment in the purple cap. Kamiko the far side of him going through to league late on. Kamiko's 1 to Wichita's second being a 2.
All three will win the race again for Jeff Smith. Oisin Murphy in the saddle for Andrew Balding. Brilliant side leap. Here comes Dunbar Road. They're coming to the wire. And it is. Oh, it's desperately close. Was it Marsh Lorraine?
Saxon Warrior, Roaring Lion, the arch rivals, roar!
Hello, and we're back. Hello, Sheena, are you there?
I am, but how are you keeping?
I'm all right. Hello. So I'd just like to say, on behalf of myself and the Extra Furlong, I would like to welcome you to our first event on behalf of the Jockeys Fund. Just like to go over some of the topics of tonight's talk is going to be early life, talking about all things coming over to Andrew Baldwin's stable.
Yep.
Then we're going to move on to Group 1 success in Britain.
Yep.
Then talking about your experience in Japan compared to racing in the United Kingdom.
Okay.
So, if we just like to start from the beginning, what was life like growing up in Killarney?
It was very, very different to what you might expect. I grew up in the countryside. I had ponies in the back garden, and I got to ride every day after school. My sisters helped me, and we had a lovely, lovely time. And at weekends, I would go jumping ponies at the local shows and go hunting and stuff. And I look back at it with really fond memories.
Yeah. So who got you involved in racing? Obviously, you spoke a bit about pony racing there. Who got you involved in racing, and has riding horses always been your dream?
Yeah, I rode from the age of 4. I begged my parents to pay to send me to riding lessons.
Yeah.
And my uncle Jim Cullity, was doing very well at the time. And he kind of suggested, why don't I ride out for some trainers? And I grew up the first part of my childhood in County Kerry. And the only racehorse trainer there is Tommy Cooper, Brian Cooper's father.
Yeah.
So all the trainers were basically in Cork. And I used to spend my weekends up there. And it kind of grew from there.
So you touched on there on your uncle. How influential was he in your journey through early part of your life in regards to racing?
Massively. He controlled my career path. He
Right.
decided which trainers I rode out for. So Tommy Stack and then Aidan O'Brien. And I speak to him all the time. I was with him yesterday. I'll see him again next week. And yeah, he's been he's probably the reason why I ended up with Qatar Racing.
Yeah. So you mentioned there Tommy Stacks. Obviously, I've read that at 15 when you went to Tommy Stacks. How was that summer for you? Your mother in an interview said that Tommy Stacks taught you the essence of riding a racehorse properly.
Yeah, there were some very good riders there at the time, Wayne Lorden and Billy Lee. An apprentice there was Shane Gray, and he was really doing well, and he's a very good rider. And I lived with him and Billy Lee, and we had a super time. Went to work every day. We worked hard. There was a little bit of competition for me to improve all the time. And having been show jumping and never really ridden racehorses, particularly flat horses, I found that transition quite difficult. But Tommy and Fozzie were both very helpful, and I did a lot of work on the simulator in the evening after evening stables, and slowly but surely I improved.
Yeah, obviously you talked about Aidan O'Brien before with your uncle. I've found that it was under them two's advice that you moved to England to Andrew Baldwin's. How was that for you moving to Andrew Baldwin's from a very young age, leaving Ireland?
Ballydoyle is the most magical place. You can imagine I spent 15 years of the bones of it from being a small child, dreaming about Coolmore horses, and all of a sudden I'm working for them and allowed to ride work. I rode Ruler of the World work as a 16-year-old, and all these good horses. Battle of Marengo, Leading Light. I remember Mars, Cristoforo Colombo. They were all in one yard. And I was a bit disappointed when Aidan said, I think it's a good idea for you to go to England, because I wanted to be apprentice to him. And, I didn't argue with him. I bit my tongue. And I realised that when I went to England, I had a point to prove. Andrew Baldwin had a host of apprentices already there. I can list them for you. Yeah. Tom Brown, Dan Muscat, Joey Haynes, Kieran Schumacher, Rob Hornby. There was more, but Jack Garrity. They're all now professional jockeys. We were all on the board to ride out at the same time. I mean, it's just incredible, the experience we had there. And yeah, I mean, I was there from October 2012 until May 2013 before I rode in a race. And the first week I had a license, I had rides straight away, and yeah, it just took off immediately.
Yeah, so obviously then it went in the autumn of 2012 when a future champion jockey and yourself arrived at Andrew Baldwin's yard. How was the first few months for you there at the yard, in a new country, new environment, obviously moving from Ballydoyle?
I was very homesick. I used to call my mother and tell her I wanted to come back, but I knew deep down that I wasn't at a level good enough to really get going in Ireland, and I knew there was opportunities for me at Andrews, and it was the place to be. And I just had faith in the people telling me to stay there. So I put my head down, and the rest is history.
Yeah. So, did you know that in the best interest for yourself for becoming a jockey, Andrews was the right place? Like, you talked about Ballydoyle and being with Aidan O'Brien, you dreamed of being at Ballydoyle, but once you were over there, did you feel that that was the best place for you?
I did, to be honest. I thought William Buick had been there, Martin Dwyer, David Probert, who was a big part of the stable and still is, had been there as apprentices. And I mean, this man was willing to give me opportunities, and yeah, I was willing to grasp them with both hands.
Yeah. So I know that Andrew sent you to the apprentice school twice. Can you just elaborate on your experience going to the apprentice school?
Yeah, so I had to go twice anyway. The first time was for a 12-week course, which was like basic education and basic riding skills, which really, and to this day, annoys me because it's taxpayers' money paying for me to go there, or was. And I had ridden work on a Derby winner. I had show jumped to a decent level, and I had completed school. I basically got the equivalent of my A-levels, and I had to spend 12 weeks there. So I didn't take it very seriously, and I really annoyed the instructors during my time there. And that information had got back to Andrew and Annalisa, and they were disappointed with my attitude. And then I got a stern talking to, And I returned to the racing school to go on my apprentice course, having been warned that my behaviour better be much better this time, you know.
Yeah.
Sorry about the background noise. It'll be fine in one line. Sorry, Alex.
All right. Is there any chance once you settle down that you can put your camera on just for YouTube? Is that all right?
Yeah, I've tried, guys. But it says you cannot start your video because the host has disabled it.
Right. No worries. I'll see what I can do with that.
But anyway, I'll continue. I went back to the apprentice school to get my license, which everyone has to do. And yeah, you can see me now.
Yeah, hello, you all right?
No, good fun. I went back there to do my apprentice course, and yeah, I got on very well. Hector Crouch was on the same course, which is amazing. He's doing very, very well.
Yeah,
and yeah, he was apprentice to Gary Moore, and I was apprentice to Andrew Boulding. And yeah, as soon as my license came through, immediately I was handed chances.
Right, champion. Obviously, your first real impact came at Ayr in 2013, that fantastic 4-timer on Ayr Gold Cup Day, and then subsequently landing the Ayr Gold Cup itself on Highland Glory. Like, how would you describe that day and the emotions through the 4-timer and then landing the win, the Gold Cup?
Yeah, it was quite amazing. I remember Andrew told me about a week in advance that I'd be riding Highland Glory, and he thought he'd have a reasonable chance. And we talked about the race and what I should do to head over towards that standside rail. And he won. And then I knew Levitate had a good chance because I was taking the 5 off, and he was in good form. Yeah. So I thought he could win. And then I picked up a spare ride because Phil Macon couldn't do the weight. So I rode Silver Rhyme, and I was just full of confidence, and he won. And then Cockney Sparrow, John Quinn told me to take my time, and I was so full of confidence I felt we were going slow, so I made the running, and she won. So it really was just I was so full of confidence. I probably pissed off a lot of the senior jockeys, but they were all winning. I went to Leicester on the Monday, and I had one ride for Andrew, and she won as well. And I was just on a roll, and my style wasn't very good.
I was just about to pick up on that. I was just about to pick on that, how in previous videos you've mentioned that like you don't like rewatching it because of your style that you rid in the Gold Cup. Yeah, I cringe at the videos, but my racing brain was working, and I was trying to learn and make the right decisions and trust my instinct, which is the most important thing any jockey can do. Yeah. And it all came together then as I progressed, I suppose, and got, lost my claim and whatever else. Yeah, I see you got your Qatar racing jacket on. How did the Qatar racing come about? How did they approach you? Was it, say, after that Ayr Gold Cup success, or how did Qatar unfold for you? So the last race on Kipco British Champions Day used to be an apprentice race. Yeah. And Sheikh Fahd had a runner, and Andrew Boulding told me I had to ride it. And we had horses at the time for Andrew, a very, very nice Bakestown called Pearl Spectre. And we were getting some more horses. So I said, yeah, absolutely. I was booked for something else, but I'll jump off it and ride the Qatar horse. That ran poorly. And then the following season, Sheikh Fahd said to David, and they had a conversation that they'd like to use me more. Bearing in mind they had hundreds of horses in the UK at the time. Yeah. So there was Jamie Spencer, Harry Bentley as retained riders, and then me would just fill in the gaps. I was very inexperienced, claiming 3. I had just been to Australia where Danny O'Brien had thrown loads of chances at me. I rode 4 winners in Flemington on New Year's Day that no one picked up on, but it really helped grow my stature abroad, and again my confidence. And I returned to the UK, and Hot Streak was one of my first rides for them in 2014, and he won the Temple Stakes. And they're just brilliant to ride for from day one. I was riding for Andrew, who wasn't tying me down to instruction, knew I was full of confidence, would allow me use my own initiative, and he would ask me what I'd want to do. The same to this day. And Qatar, very same. When I stand in the paddock with Sheikh Fahd, I tell him what I think, our chances are and what I think is going to happen. And then
they always nod and say, "Brilliant, you go out and do your thing." So that process enables me to kind of have the ability to use my own instinct, and as I touched on before, that is what helps jockeys more than anything.
Yeah, obviously 2018. I mean, for you, was that your main breakout year with your 9 Group 1s? I think it was.
Yeah, 2017 probably was. I had been
2017?
dreaming about Group 1 wins, and I couldn't get any on the board, and I didn't know what was wrong. I won about 10 Group 2s in 2017 and maybe 2016, but I couldn't ride a Group 1 winner, and I didn't really feel I left any behind me. And it was getting to a stage where I thought, when could I break through? And a claim came along. Terry Norman, who does form for me, told my agent, Gavin Horn, that a claim would be available in the Park Stakes at Doncaster. And he won that. And his next target was going to be the Prix de la Forêt. And I rode him in that, and he won from a very tricky draw. I was drawn on the rail, and I knew what Chanty was like, because another thing Kata had enabled me to do was have lots of French trips on horses that there was no pressure. So I'd ridden on Arc Day numerous times, and I had been there and not expected to win. So I had been, I had tasted what it was like. And Acclaim won, and then Blonde Me went to Woodbine, and I thought she'd win. She had a light campaign. She went in there with very good form. My racing bag had got lost on the trip to Canada, so I had to borrow all the equipment. So the helmet was too small for me. It was sitting on top of my head. My boots were literally like 500 years old. The saddle I'd used, the stirrups wouldn't go up short enough. So it was a complete nightmare. But anyway, I hate looking at that race because I couldn't ride with the style I had wanted to ride with. But she won, and then that winter in Dubai, Ben Battle came along, and Thunder Snow. I was second in a group 1 on Thunder Snow, and it just snowfalled. Suddenly, all these opportunities, Beautiful Romance. I won a Group 2 on her. I was starting to really feel like, although I was still very young, but I feel like I belonged in the weighing room with the top riders. And then 2018, Roaring Lion, Lightning Spear, good spare rides. It just all came together, and I took off. I went from just breaking through to really sitting at the top table, and I was second in the Jockeys Championship to Sylvester de Souza, which meant the world to me. I felt I was riding at a decent level. I think I rode at 18%. I got invited to go to Japan. It all started to happen.
Yeah, so before we touch on Roaring Lion, just in regards to Group 1 success, just for the viewers who might not understand racing as much as like Eddie, you do, how important is winning a Group 1, and why is Group 1 so special?
It's like a football player who's been playing very well in the Championship, being signed by a Premier League club that is competitive in the Premier League. That is the bottom line. Or a tennis player getting through the first stages of Wimbledon, gets in as a wild card and wins their first 3 matches. That is exactly what it's like.
Yeah, and then obviously you touched on Ben Battle, and then obviously like Maidan with the Dubai turf and stuff. What's it like racing in Dubai, or say like Dubai as opposed to over here in the UK? What's the main differences you can pull from it?
Well, the facilities at Maidan are incredible. The weighing room for jockeys is something like a first-class flight, a first-class Emirates flight. It's a massive weighing room. We all have our own locker and padded seats. There's a steam room, a sauna, and it's all huge. It's all done like double scale. A proper jacuzzi bath, a restaurant for jockeys, a lounge area, a gym, TV screens everywhere, loads of valets running around. We don't have a physio, but I'm sure if you wanted a physio, that wouldn't be an issue. And then it's all under lights. On the big nights at World Cup, you get thousands of people there, celebrities, live music after racing, fireworks. It's the thing. It's what I used to watch on television as a child and be mesmerized. go to bed at night and you can't sleep because the adrenaline, you're buzzing. It's like watching the Grand National or the Cheltenham Gold Cup, but under lights, you know.
Under lights, yeah. So obviously we mentioned Roaring Lion. So how special was he for you personally and for your own career development?
Everyone needs a good horse, and I had a great one. He was world champion, 3-year-old. I think if he stayed in training at 4, he would have even been better. He was just a machine once he concentrated. When he didn't concentrate like he did at 2 and in his first run at 3, he wasn't even at the races. But he learned. He was a slow learner, but when he learned his job, he was an absolute machine. And it's terrible what happened to him. But I hope one of his babies will be. And it's actually funny because Dubai Millennium was a machine. He only had one crop, and he produced Dubai. Roaring Lion covered the best mares, and we just have to hope to God that he throws a superstar as well. What were his attributes? Okay, to look at, he is beautiful. Why did the general public adore him? Why does everyone remember him? Because of his beauty. To ride, he never pulled. Very intelligent horse. He'd relax in a race. Going to the start, he was neighing at other horses. He wasn't even thinking about his job because he had that much ability.
Yeah.
Incredible turn of foot, but he didn't always have that turn of foot. He developed it as he learned to race. And just a great mind. He knew he was a champion in the end. He used to pause for photographs, and I loved him dearly. And another thing that was incredible about him, he wasn't colty in the stable. For viewers that don't know what that means, he wasn't boisterous. He wasn't trying to bite and kick you, whereas most stallions and full males are like that, and he wasn't.
Yeah. So, and obviously Irish Champion Stakes Day, the Irish Champions stakes win on Roaring Lion at Leopardstown. You've described that as one of your best days with your family there. Like, could you just describe how good that of a day that was for you?
Yeah, massive pressure. I won my first race in Ireland a couple of races previously for Willie Mullins, a guy I kind of grew up meeting at the races with my uncle Jim, but it was just a very special day. The crowds in Ireland, Leopardstown is the number 1 track in Ireland because the crowd is really on top of the races. It attracts a very racing orientated crowd, but thousands of them, and they create an incredible atmosphere. I knew it was going to be a very tricky race, and Roaring Lion was just exceptional.
Yeah. So, and obviously then he went on to win the Queen Elizabeth II Stakes at Ascot. Was that another thrilling day for you? And obviously, Her Majesty the Queen. And is there any other pressure for riding for the Queen, or is it just like any other?
No, it's very special to put on Her Majesty's colours. But Sheikh Fahd was watching the race with Her Majesty that day, and I wanted to get a result for him. At the time, look, I've had so many disappointments in my career. I don't feel the pressure, if I'm honest. People ask, and I might say at times, I feel the pressure. I feel pressure when I'm riding, or when I feel like I'm riding poorly. But when I'm about to ride a good horse in a top race, that disappears. There are times when my confidence is low when I'm showing up at Kempton on a Wednesday, and I'd know winners on the Tuesday, and I felt I should have won on something.
Yeah.
That's and any jockey, they might lie to you and say they don't. It's not a roller coaster ride. Being a jockey always is, and there's no doubt about that. That goes for all the top jockeys. Anyway, I wanted to get a result for him. I knew the ground was definitely against him, but I knew I was on the best horse in the race, and just to make it all very smooth, save energy, come through the gears slowly, and he'll win if it works out.
Yeah. Champion, and then obviously in 2018 you won the Coral Eclipse on him as well. I've read that you prepared thoroughly for that race, making race profiles for each horse in the race. So you studied the tactics of each horse in the race very well. Could you just go into a bit more depth about that race?
Yeah, I knew, and the same at the Juddmonte International. I knew exactly where every horse would sit, and I knew who would make the running, who would take their time. I kind of puzzled it all together, pieced it all together in a puzzle. And yeah, I relied on my ability to do homework then. Not that I didn't have the ability to make those split-second decisions, but I probably lacked the confidence to really rely on my instinct. Whereas now I think I would be better equipped to ride those horses because I completely trust myself and I can deal with it if it goes wrong.
Yeah.
But at that stage in my life, I wasn't. And I wanted to impress people by doing my homework. And yeah, that's the reason I did it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it paid off in the end with the victory in the Coral Eclipse.
Yeah, and the same with the Juddmonte, really. Yeah. You know, I knew that Sumion was going to go to the far rail, and I wanted to sit on the inside so I wouldn't get blocked in, and it was all very, very smooth then, you know.
Yeah, and obviously in 2019, you went off for the winter and spent the winter in Japan. How was that time away in Japan? How was that for you, riding and life in Japan compared to over here?
Well, it was a lifelong dream. You know, I remember sitting in Hong Kong in 2016. I did a 3-month stint there, and I did okay for Hong Kong. I rode 5 winners. I didn't think I did very well, but seeing everyone else go before and after me, I did perfectly fine. And I met my interpreter there, Hiroshi Ando, and I told him my dream was to ride in Japan, that I watched Christophe Soumillon win the Japan Cup on Epiphaneia. And he said, well, let's make it happen. If you're good enough one day, I'll get you there and I'll get you in with a trainer. And yeah, he managed to do it. And I was with Mr. Kaneda, Almondai's trainer, living in Nakayama. So a couple of hours from the training center, Miho. And we would go there twice a week. I had to do very light weights, as I still do in Japan. I get down to 8 stone 5, which is an absolute killer. But I ride the best horses in the country. And when I gallop those horses in the morning, the buzz, it's like, bear in mind as I'm riding Machines by Deep Impact, by Lord Kanaloa. The beauty about riding good horses in the morning is there's no pressure. And I can do as much or as little as I want and rely completely on my feel. And the amount of horses I could gallop in the morning at Miho Training Center and get off them and say to Hiroshi, that's a group horse, that's a machine. If that stays down, that's a machine. And they only put me on the good ones. So it was just a brilliant experience. The food is incredible in Japan. The people are so polite. The prize money, I get 5%. You pay tax on it there. It's obviously very expensive because you've got to pay for your own accommodation and everything. But I did well there. I worked very hard. I lived my dream. And yeah, I was just very lucky to be there.
You touched on about meeting weights and obviously the low weight in Japan. Just how hard is it meeting those weights, even over here, meeting the weight for a jockey in general and especially yourself?
Some jockeys struggle more than most. I tip my hat to James Doyle and Adam Kirby, Dougie Costello. They work incredibly hard at it. I push myself to a limit to do basically 8.7, but I've got to get down to 8.5. I did 8.6 at the Breeders' Cup in November in 2021. I want to win the best races all over the world, and I'm prepared to push myself to those limits. I'm 9 stone 10 as I sit here today, so 18 pounds heavier than I was in November. And yeah, it's not easy, but it's something I'm willing to work at.
Yeah, you talked about the Japan Cup before, and I was Christian Sumio winning Japan Cup. How special was that for you being over there and then landing that one?
Yeah, it's something I've never kind of gone back and looked at my big race wins and relived the moment, but I will do someday, whether that's tonight or in 40 years time. It was incredible. I galloped Suave Richard at Rito Training Center, so there's 2 in Japan and they're hours away from each other. So Miho is Tokyo, but 2.5 hours from Tokyo, and Rito is Kyoto, but 2.5 hours from Kyoto. So I was riding a Rito horse, Suave Richard, and I galloped him, and he galloped home in an incredible time on the hill woodchip, and I didn't extend him because these Japanese horses are incredibly fit. And what I have learned from all my experience with Japan is don't ask them too much in their final gallops. And the jockey who's riding him in the big race always does the final gallops. Doesn't matter what country it's in, on the Japanese horses. Okay, so just to give you perspective, and he galloped home in like 21.9 or something. He galloped home having gone up a mountain on wood chip, which is a deep surface, quicker than a sprinter. I thought, if this fella relaxes and stays a mile and a half, he has every chance.
Yeah.
So I sat on the fence. I got him to relax immediately. And then I just needed a split, and he got it. And yeah, I mean, I think I rode 4 or 5 winners the same day. Tokyo is a lucky track for me. I've had 7 winners there in one day before. The crowd, there was 110,000 there. This is pre-COVID. You know, it's a memory I'll go to my deathbed with.
Yeah. Obviously, you've had success with Deirdre over here. Obviously, down in Goodwood. How special is that? Is riding Deirdre and winning on Deirdre, knowing with your Japanese connections that you've made?
Yeah, so Deirdre, I actually galloped on the Alba Hatchery in Newmarket, and I said to my agent and her connections and my interpreter Hiroshi that if there was a Group 1 on the Alba Hatchery, she'd be unbeatable. I just wasn't sure, would she handle Goodwood, those ups and downs, turns. You know what that nasty track is, the top bend, it's very sharp. The size of her, she probably didn't handle the track very well, but she was in the right place. They went too quick, Frankie kicked too soon, and the race fell apart. Budo gave me an inch up the inside. I shouted at him. He was on Chanel. I think he wasn't going anywhere. He moved off, let me up, and she got the job done. And yeah, just, you know, that was another amazing day.
Yeah, I seen we did an interview with Ollie Bell, and you talked about how you want to project how important racing is over here to the Japanese viewers and show how much appreciative you are of them. So does that make it even better winning on Deirdre? Yeah,
I mean, I know the Japanese fans love their horses, and I was in a privileged position to deliver them their first Group 1 in England, and you know, a couple cents. So yeah, it was a very, very special afternoon.
Yeah, you just touched on before about the Breeders' Cup in November, and how was that whole experience for you going over there and then winning as well?
Yeah. So Love's Only You was supposed to be my ride, and I got jocked off her, and my interpreter and the trainer, you know, had booked me, and that happens very rarely, but I bit my tongue, and you know, I know some jockeys may have thrown their toys out of the pram and said, I'm not riding the 50-1 shot, but I've got huge respect for Love Only You and Marshall Lorraine's trainer, Mr. Yahagi, who I used to ride the filly that won the Erie McKinnon and the Hong Kong Cup. Damien Lane ended up getting on her. I rode her in Hong Kong to be placed. I'm just trying to think of her now. It's a French name. I used to ride her for Mr. Yahagi as well. So I was happy to ride the horse, and you know, she didn't have much chance on paper. Just to explain this, she often runs an NAR, which is the championship of racing. She doesn't run the Premiership, because NAR is dirt racing, and she is a dirt horse. There is dirt racing in JRA, but it's limited. And her NAR form was fine, but not probably good enough. But again, they didn't tell me how to ride her. I had a plan to follow Jose Ortiz because I really admire him as a rider. I got as close to his heels as possible without clipping his, so she wouldn't get too much kickback. And when the pace collapsed, I let her move up. And yeah, it was, you know, I just prayed that the photo went my way. At the time, Alex, and I'm very happy to talk about this, I knew that the BHA were coming for me with the COVID breaches. I knew the alcohol breaches were coming for me. I had known, obviously, for a long time before that, but it was now public knowledge, and I felt like I had a point to prove. And what a better way to prove that I was still able to ride.
Then win the Breeders' Cup, yeah. And obviously, Kamiko, I mean, what a journey he had, a short journey, but I personally loved the whole journey with watching him. 2,000 guineas winner. How was that day at Newmarket for you?
Incredibly special. It was a shame there was no crowd. Sheikh Fahd was just a few miles away in Newmarket, and I was staying with him, so I saw him after the race. And it was just joyous evening. You know, I was happy with my draw. I had a plan. I knew what was going to happen, and I was able to execute it. And
Yeah.
it's the fastest guineas in history. There was obviously a tailwind, very fast ground, but there was a drop of rain to take the sting out of it. You know, he was a very, very special horse, and Andrew Boulding had him tuned to the second. His training program up to that was incredible, and Andrew's been rewarded since. The standard of horse in the stable now is growing year on year, and I was very proud of the joint effort for everyone, you know, for Qatar Racing for buying him, Andrew for training him, and for me for riding him in every start, you know.
Yeah, you mentioned about breaking the track record. Did you have any tactics during the race? I know you've mentioned about dropping on the heels of Ryan Moore and early on getting outpaced almost.
Yeah, I knew Andrea would make the running on the rail, and I knew there was good horses around me, but I thought Andrea would stop. And there's nothing wrong with Juan Elko. He's a good horse, but you know, if you gun a horse into top gear from the beginning, it's very hard for them to stay going, even with a tailwind. Yeah. I just thought Arizona would be a good one to get around and just to follow the right ones through and get the splits.
Yeah. Was there a moment in that race when you thought, yeah, I'm gonna get up here, or was it a matter of you've passed the finish line, realised you had a win?
No, I thought I'd win in the last furlong if we stayed going, you know. The race was run at an incredible fast speed. I didn't really have much time to think, you know, through the run. Bear in mind, racing had just restarted, so it's not like I had been riding for like the 2 months before every day.
Yeah.
But it was the same for everyone. But that killer instinct probably wasn't there, and it was all a bit of a blur. I'm trying to remember to keep it smooth, follow the right ones, but at the same time, I didn't have that match sharpness.
Almost like keep it simple.
Yeah. I mean, the key is to keep it simple all the time, but yeah.
So with that day, was there any preparation that you went through, like, or is on other race days, is there any significant preparation that you go through that you feel is significant to you?
No, I think everyone does their homework now because it's so competitive. But
yeah,
I watch the replays, probably not all the time of them winning, more so when they lose and probably why they lost. And
try not to do that.
Yeah, and I try just to have a fresh mind every day. You know, like I believe in myself at certain race courses, and you know, there's some days I don't believe myself. For example, at Bath, but then I remind myself I've had a 4-timer at Bath before. Why can't I do that today? You know, it's just very important to approach every day as a new day, and that's easier said than done at times. But I try my best.
Yeah. And then, so was that day one of your best days in racing, or what was your best day in racing so far?
Every day is, you know, every big day is special due to different reasons. I'll give you an example, like alcohol free, winning the Cheveley Park at 2 was massive. I felt an awful lot of pressure in 2020, and it was a very messy year with me failing a drugs test, and I never knew what week I was going to be banned, you know, so to get her over the line was incredibly special. Yeah. And then obviously the end of this year, I kind of knew what was ahead. I didn't think I was going to get 14 months and a 31 grand fine, but I knew I was in trouble. And you know, to go to Arc weekend and win on that 2-year-old filly was a very special day. And you know, I just live for those days. I work hard in the mornings. I try and get on with all the trainers and owners, take the disappointment and the success with equal measure. And when I get jocked off, I don't throw my toys out of the pram. So it's very rewarding when those things win and it all happens, you know.
Yeah. So obviously 3 championships, then 1 as an apprentice. How tough is it winning 3? Obviously winning 1 isn't easy, but 3.
Yeah, the stress, and it's often stress I cause myself as well, because I was drinking a lot, you know, since probably 2017. I'd be drinking every night on the way home from the races. So then I wasn't sleeping great, and I was still getting up very early. And the way I was forgetting about the stresses of that work load was drinking, and combination of things, and then trying to remain in a good mood outwardly, but inwardly I feel like the world's on my shoulders. And I have the BHA in the background and France Gallo previously to that, and yeah, it was just it's hard work, but it was self-created. And if I go back again, it will be on my own terms. And of course, I want to be more successful than I ever was before. But there's such talented riders. It's to put it in reality, and I'm always honest in these interviews. It changes people. The Jockeys Championship. The fellas chasing me, their mood changes, and they fall out with people. And I've learned from being exactly, and I've learned from being in that title battle. Don't fall out with people, and as a result of not falling out with people, that guy's going to do me a favor when I need an inch, and he's gone backwards. He'll give me that inch, So I make sure I'm still very kind and to all the apprentices, and that's very important to me. And as a result, they respect me, and it all flows. But the journeys outside of the weighing room, and my time outside of that environment was tough.
Yeah, you touched on about how hard like the last year's been. How tough has that been on yourself, really?
Yeah, the last 2 seasons, because if I didn't win those Jockeys Championships, I allowed the pressure that France Gallo and the BHA put on me to get to me, and I had to show a lot of mental strength. And there's always going to be people that are unhappy with my behavior, and there's going to be people that really support me. And I have a long time to think about it now, and I hope if I do return in February next year or March next year, I can do it on my own terms and put things right. I said at the end of this season I had enough for the Jockeys Championships, but realistically, I'm going to have a point to prove when I return, or if I return again. I can't just show up for one ride at Kempton and think, oh, that's great, I'll go home now and go to bed and ride out 2 lots tomorrow and go to Sandown for 2 rides. If I'm going to race ride, I want to be the best I can be.
Yeah, it's almost like starting fresh.
It is, yeah. And I obviously feel like no one's born with this right to ride the best horses, and I fear they're going to disappear. You'll know that most flat horses have 2 seasons, and a lot of the horses I won on at 2 won't be here when I return. So I'll have to find new horses, and it's not going to be easy. I'm going to obviously have the support of Qatar Racing, which I'm incredibly grateful. Andrew Boulding, but Andrew's got new apprentices. David Probert's riding very well, and I don't have any God-given right to walk back in there and get on top horses.
Yeah. So you touched on about how you've got this ban, 40-month ban. What is next for Oisin Murphy? I know you've been show jumping recently.
Yeah, I'm unemployed, and obviously I finished school, but I don't have a college education. So I'm fortunate that I'm still going to be working for Qatar. I'm still going to ride out for all the Qatar trainers and anyone else. I'll pop into Saad bin Sarur and Sir Michael Stout as well. The show jumpers, I have 2 very nice horses with a guy called Richard Howley. One I jumped myself, and the other one I haven't ridden in competition yet. I'm going to have to trade horses and buy and sell and keep myself busy that way. I'll sit on a lot of the breeze up horses in the coming weeks in search for a future star. I found Dragon Symbol before. I rode Memas as a breezer. I thought he was too small. How wrong was I? He's the most prolific sire you can imagine. So yeah, that's going to be my immediate jobs, and And yeah, I've probably lost respect of a lot of people, but I think by being honest, that respect will return, and if it doesn't, then so be it.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for all the questions. I've just got a couple of questions I've took from the audience, if you don't mind answering.
Sure.
So the first one's just your favourite track to ride at and why?
York, great crowd, left-handed, flat. I've had great days there. I was leading rider there before. It's a special meeting. I love riding when it's there. I feel like it's a championship track. I don't want to knock any of the other race courses, but Ascot, you can be unlucky from the 1.25 miles, 1.5 mile start, downhill into the turn. It can really mess horses' heads up. Sandown, again, you can be unlucky inside. You can get locked up there, no fault of your own. I just feel it's a brilliant place, and it's a lovely historic town. And I feel the best horses race there, you know. Gaeth, Roaring Lion, Enable, Magical, Mishriff. It's brilliant.
On the flip side of that, is there any tracks you don't like?
Yeah, anywhere where I feel like I can't ride well. Brighton was very good to me as an apprentice, but I feel like I'm not as good as I once was there.
Right, no worries. The next question is the toughest jockey you've come up against in the weighing room, as in, is there a jockey that if you see him next to you in the stalls, you think he's my biggest danger?
Christophe Simeon. I think I love his mental strength. He's been knocked down and risen back to the heights numerous times. He's had no good horses for seasons and then popped up, and he's an amazing man that works incredibly hard at his weight. In Japan, he does 55 kilo, so he gets down to 54 kilo stripped. I mean, that is physical and mental torture.
Yeah.
I obviously spend time there with him, and he gets into hot baths at like 42 degrees for 15 minutes. Bearing in mind, he is already severely dehydrated on an empty stomach, then gets into an ice bath and then repeats the process over and over again. And the sleep, you cannot sleep when you're that dehydrated because your lips are stuck together. You've got a headache, migraines the whole weekend. You know, I'm the same, but you know, a guy that is incredibly wealthy, has won Arcs, has won all the races I dream about except the Epsom Derby. I take my hat off to him.
Yeah. So, second last one, what would you be if you weren't a jockey? So, what would you be if you weren't involved in racing, say?
I'd try and be an international show jumper. It was my first love. You know, my friends that I rode against are now competing for Ireland and do it as a full-time job. And yeah, that is what I'd have done.
Yeah. So, final one. What is the best relationship you had with a horse in your years of riding? Do you think Roaring Lion's colt will have a successful career?
That's an interesting one. Probably Ben Battle. He gave me my first Royal Ascot winner. He gave me a group winner at the end of last year. I'm so thrilled he's gone to Japan healthy, and he's going to cover a fantastic book of mares there. He's by Dubawi, out of a Group 1 winner in Narain. Incredibly mentally tough. I loved his will to win, and I felt like I had a connection with him. He listened to me. My record on him was unbelievable, and he's the one horse that I really had an opportunity to form a bond with him from 2017 to 2021.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much, Oisin. It's been an absolute pleasure learning about all things racing with you. So thank you very much.
Very welcome, guys.
Thank you.
Cheers, bud. Take care.
All right.